Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Finding and Rating Government Agents on the Internet. Today we're going to be looking at Jeremy Reyes, who is otherwise known as Alien Scientist. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do the screen record. Don't worry. Hold up here. Hold up here. Hold up here. Hi, today we're going to be reviewing Jeremy Reyes, otherwise known as Alien Scientist. Now, I first became aware of Jeremy Reyes from the Dark Horse podcast with Brett Weinstein and Heather Hang, and it was curious. You know, they tipped me off because they said that he'd been following their work for... They said that they'd been following his work for a long time, and his work in and of itself is ridiculous, so that didn't make any sense, and so that drove me to check it out further. And by the way, just like pan back, the reason why this is such a big deal for me, and the reason why I know that this is real and this is actually going on, is because I've actually tried to investigate this before in the past, in person, and basically got threatened by fake cartel members and strangers for like the strangest month of my whole life. My phone algorithm started showing me videos of people who looked like my family being tortured and threats directly towards me. And the whole ordeal was so terrifying that I actually thought that my entire family was dead and replaced with AI, and so I escaped to Mexico. And that sounds crazy, but you know, when you realize that there are government agents on the internet and that they're actually now sending people to your house to threaten you, and you've always been a good citizen and you always loved the government, it's kind of traumatic. And, you know, with AI just around the corner and all these, you know, pretty much the powers of Sauron will now be available to the state in a very short time frame. That was just a lot. And they also wanted me to think that because, you know, if they have access to your heart rate, they have access to your entire data history, they can find out exactly what your fears are, exactly what you love, and exactly what you miss, and use that against you. And they did, and I nearly died in Mexico because of it, honestly. And I tried to bury this for a long time, but I can't. Frankly, because other people know about this, including, like, you know, Brett Weinstein and Jordan Peterson and other folks. And, well, I figure the best thing we can do is just get everyone else to know about it. And especially, it's not just like we're talking about, you know, little strange corners where people are, you know, putting out conspiracies for reasons that we can get into. It also happens on the very mainstream. You know, false flag operations, the reasons why these sort of started were to break up political movements that didn't really fit within the geopolitical strategy of the people who are frankly unelected and who are stayed there throughout the years. And so right now we have people like Dave Smith and Nick Fuentes ginning up a lot of awful ideas within the general population in order to divide MAGA, which is a real big issue. You know, I was talking to someone at work pretty recently, and they started making some anti-Semitic comments, like not even like in a joking way. He's like, I'll go into it, but like, yeah, they were actually frustrated. And if you're PSYOP, talk about the law of unintended consequences, mate. For one, you made me, and you thought that like PSYOPing me with hours and hours of insane footage and terrifying me and threatening me would make me forget and not make me a bigger enemy of some sort. I'm not your enemy to the degree that you serve the United States, I'll tell you that. I'm a friend of the United States. And I am an enemy to anyone who wants to stand against her. And more particularly, that above that, I'm a server of Christ. And I think that actually part of this whole PSYOP is that the people in charge for a very long time haven't been a fan of Christians, mainly because they know at the end of the day they can't be controlled. They'd rather have a patriot who will blindly follow whatever they tell them to do than someone who will ultimately follow their conscience. That's a bit of a grand speculation, but all I can tell you is that obviously they are interested in dividing Christians, castigating them as outcasts, making them believe that spiritual sightings in the past were nothing but like aliens implanting thoughts into people's heads to make them kind of go crazy. And, you know, there's obviously a target here. And, yeah, and I think because these folks are literally trying to take on God, the structure of the story is becoming weirdly metaphysical. And, well, we need to all be careful because we are incredibly powerful these days. With that being said, let's look at Jeremy Reyes. So Jeremy Reyes, first of all, imagine you're a person who wants to investigate UFOs and you want to be taken seriously. Why would you choose your name to be something called alien scientist? For one, that's a little ridiculous. And for two, I mean, look at this. This is like low quality images. This is fake. This what even is this? This is something straight out of Halo. Brian Keating makes embarrassingly historic tweet. I mean, this is all kind of nonsense type stuff. Oh, here he is with Gary Nolan. Let's click on this. What is this real quick? I've clicked around here before, and this one honestly won't take that much explaining to do as far as pointing out he's fake, because this guy's just ridiculous.
So I just wanted to
looks a little bit like me.
We got about 20 minutes left till they go live with the video of Hal put off the new one. I just found this is from 1994.
Everyone needs to pay attention to this because they will do this to your kids and they will do this to you.
References a breakthrough that had happened
they don't give a fuck.
Earlier, which would have been around 1984, 1985.
They will actually act demonically to scare you.
So we're gonna start off with this, and we're gonna play this, and while we count down and wait for the other video to start. So we'll start off with this.
With that correlation, the correlation. And in my prior lab, we didn't ever really talk about correlation. I said, why are we talking about correlation so much? Why is it? He says, because Gary, and an interesting word choice, because I still remember it, data and results in isolation are phenomena. But when you can relate something to prior knowledge with correlation, you are relating it to the total foundation of human knowledge. So you have to build the castle piece by piece. You know, and that makes total sense. And so, you know, it's those little snippets of teaching and wisdom that you get across your career that you embody and say, this is a principle by which I approach it. So that's really the reason why you take step by step. And then, frankly, as well, there's only so much any one person can do. And the whole idea of creating a permission structure for other people to do it is to be able to bring in others to help. And they are. I mean, just look at the literal cottage industry of organizations that have now sprouted up. And Sol is taking some hand in helping to coordinate intergroup discussions because Sol doesn't want to do it all. And so it's, you know,
with him for years and years, and they have very distinctive personalities and voices. By the way, all his archives, Stuart Alexander's archives, are at the Archives of the Impossible.
See, they want you to think these people are like aliens. Why is his hair doing that?
Donated everything, and you can go and listen to
what the fuck?
These meetings, these seances.
I don't know.
So the question.
By the way, you also notice that it's not what you expect it to look like. You always imagine that when you're thinking of CIA false flag operations to be sort of like, I don't know, FBI looking guy in black glasses. And it is to some extent, sometimes. But that's because they're always playing this very weird, like, meta game of confusion and mirrors. And, like, should you be taking this seriously? Should you not? Like, they'll bring up whatever. It does, you know what? The reason why we're doing this is to show you guys, because it's so hard to explain. It is something that you kind of have to intuitively catch on to. And once you do, you'll realize people are pretty common. Let's go back to Alien Scientist channel, because I remember there being some interesting stuff they had posted a long time ago. Ah, this looks interesting. I've seen this before. Okay. All this tells me is that this just tells me that these slabs have been going on for a very, very long time.
And with his models, Mirabeau is gradually increasing both the scale and the detail. Within 5 years, he hopes to lift mini-satellites to orbit with a craft such as this.
This is a full-scale model of a laser-propelled light craft. The entire vehicle is as you see it here. There are no external tanks. There's a small propellant tank inside. The front end of this is where the satellite electronics go. The whole front end of this thing becomes an inlet to make this engine supplied with air on the way to orbit. The back side of this is a large parabolic mirror, highly polished, that is designed to capture the laser beam that is projected to it from the ground onto this optic, and it focuses the laser power right inside this shroud here. When that happens, an explosion occurs as the air is rapidly heated, creating a shock wave that pushes this vehicle forward. As the beam is rapidly pulsed, the engine is continuously propelled on its way to orbit.
Does any of that make sense? No, it doesn't.
Why should astronauts have all the fun? I want to go to space. I can't afford it. It's too expensive. I could afford it if it was for the price of an airline ticket. And that's why I'm developing lightcraft technology, because it would open up space to everyone.
There's even a second generation of ideas about beam-powered spacecraft. Close to
I actually think I saw this on TV as a kid, by the way.
the Earth, the craft converts sunlight into electron beams that spin like a fan, moving it in any direction. Then it flips over. An orbiting solar power station hits it with a laser or microwave blast to generate 9 billion watts of electricity. This powers a remarkable engine that forces air downwards and even pushes the atmosphere out of its path. The 60-foot craft and a dozen passengers could reach the moon in just 5.5 hours. A solar-powered, virtually free ride.
Okay, who is this guy? American engineer. This sounds very fake. Leek M. Mirabeau is an American aerospace engineer known for pioneering research into beam-based energy propulsion and inventing lightcraft. A longtime professor of aerospace engineering at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, he became one of the first researchers to demonstrate sustained laser-propelled flight, conducting more than 100 experimental launches at the White Sands Missile Range between the 1990s and 2000. Maria promoted the concept of light ports, or orbital power stations, as a framework for low-cost satellite launches and hypersonic passenger travel, publishing widely and co-authoring the Lightcraft Flight Handbook, whatever. His work included international collaborations on laser-supported hypersonic aerodynamics in the Brazilian Air Force and the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory. His career bridged both theoretical propulsion concepts and the hands-on engineering demonstrations, linking laboratory with... Okay, I'm sorry if this guy is a real person, but there's no way people in the 90s thought that technology that he was playing with in any way had the sort of energy to break Earth's atmosphere to leave Earth's gravitational pull. That's absolutely preposterous. Remember, this is after we went to the moon. I'm sorry if this person is a real person, but I'm going to assume that for now he is not real and was never real. And that a lot of this UFO stuff going back a long time has always just been kind of a government slap to make you believe, either to hide experimental aircraft that the government's working on, okay? But I mostly think it's just because it's easier to have, you want to have shiny conspiracies to keep people from paying attention to the real conspiracies. That's really a general thing. I'm less interested in the idea that they have real aircraft, although I think I've heard RFK mention something like that before. And I trust RFK. I don't know about the claims about JFK and all that. I don't know about that. Although I definitely think that, for the same reason I just explained, there is a bunch of dumb conspiracies around the JFK assassination that makes me think that there's at least something there. And honestly, I'd use that as a rule of thumb. So, not always, use that with discretion. But, just like if you see a cloud of smoke somewhere, doesn't mean there's something hiding there, but there could be. You know what I mean? You don't know what's there. And that's kind of what a lot of these conspiracies are. By the way, I'm pretty sure Jeffrey Epstein from the beginning was a psyop to get Republicans. Not Republicans, to... well, it's complicated. That's what it's been turned into. That's what I'm pretty sure. Honest. I think that. And my guess is that... I shouldn't be going into this because now I'm just going into speculations. Yeah, well, I think he killed himself. Bleep that. I'm not going to go into more speculations. Just see whatever you want. So, alien scientists thought you'd post that. Okay. So you're getting an image of how strange this all is. And that if you were looking at this channel, immediately you'd think that, yes, UFOs are real, and this guy has good reason to believe that there is some. Let's do another video here just to get that idea across, because there was another weird one I remember watching. Introduction to quasicrystals. The basics. Okay, the basics of quasicrystals. 17 years ago. So we're talking 2008, 2006.
The first thing we're going to talk about is tiling. No, not quite that kind of tiling. We're actually going to be making the tiles from various shapes. The idea is to see which tiles will fill the plane without leaving any gaps, and figure out what it is about the geometry of these shapes that determines which ones will tile the plane and which ones won't. One thing we notice about all the shapes that tile the plane is that they have 2 or more lines of symmetry. This is because in order to get shapes to fit together without leaving any gaps, they need to be equal and opposite in 2 dimensions on both sides in order to tile the 2-dimensional plane. Which of these shapes have symmetry? Which ones do you think will tile the plane? Correct me if I'm wrong, but these ones don't form patterns. The ones I've circled in green might, but I only need to test one of them because I can already identify them as homogeneous topological transformations of one another. Homogeneous means the same everywhere, or equal on all sides, and topology is a branch of mathematics that deals with the connectedness of points.
Wow, what he just said is absolute nonsense, and I think you guys can see that that was absolute nonsense. Okay, I'm not going to explain that. Did you guys see that? Let's rewatch what he just said again. No serious person would go through the work of making all this to say such absolute nonsense, okay? By the way, Roger Penrose actually designed these images that we see in the beginning. They're beautiful images. I have a book from M.C. Escher. I was actually really surprised to see these here. This has nothing to do with any of that. I can't even make sense of what he's saying, because, like, those two images don't have anything to do with each other.
Which of these shapes have symmetry? Which ones do you think will tile the plane? Correct me if I'm wrong, but these ones don't form patterns. The ones I've circled in green might, but I only need to test one of them because I can already identify them as homogeneous topological transformations of one.
Only the octagon well, these ones can. Not this. That's the one that's not correct.
Homogeneous means the same everywhere, or equal on all sides. And topology is a branch of mathematics that deals with the connectedness of points. So,
the connectedness of points, and he shows this is space-time folding.
So, this only works.
So someone went through all the work to put together this whole video to say absolute nonsense.
Because I do the same thing to both sides, symmetrically. You can also, this is how Escher made a lot of his tessellations and drawings, is you can cut a piece out of one side and glue it onto the other side through the line of symmetry, and you'll find that the pieces will still tile the plane, and you can do that an indefinite number of times, and in order to cut out pieces that look like an arm, and then figure out where to make the hole and how to make the hole fit and work in well with the rest of the structure, so that it actually makes a shape and looks like something. So an ordinary arrow will tile the plane, but however this arrow has a broken tail and will leave some gaps. It turns out that all shapes which tile the plane obey several simple geometry rules. One, the shape must have two or more lines of symmetry, and the second one is that the angles on the shape must either add up to or divide evenly into 360 degrees in order to complete the circle and fill in the entire space. When we expand from 2 dimensions to 3, we are no longer tiling a plane but filling in 3D space. This is the geometry behind crystallography, the science of crystals. A crystal tiles the 3D plane in much the same way that a 2D tilings we just used. So only crystals use real atoms as the building blocks instead of
I want to pause it for a second. Let's just jump over to what is Real Scientist's channel, what it kind of looks like. Okay, this is Michael Levin. I spelled his name just wrong. Here we go. So let's see here. And you know what? At first it might be like, oh, this is kind of similar things, but you immediately see that they're actually talking about things that make sense. Okay.
We allow learners to pick teachers proportional to how well those teachers actually performed in their lifetime. So a success bias just means that they're more likely to have a teacher that actually predicts the environment well. But you can see that adding the success bias didn't really increase the evolution of social learning. We also tried making social learning cheaper.
See, this is what it actually looks like. Someone is explaining something. You can almost see the person is actively thinking as they're explaining it. You know? They actually understand the concept and they're actually grappling with it as they're speaking about it. Okay, I think that's... You can hear that. And a lot of this, it's going to be hard because I think a lot of people who spend time in these sort of internet spaces are a little bit autistic, and it's hard for them to pick up on social cues sometimes. No, I don't know, X. Let's go back to what we were doing before. actually talking about quartz crystals.
Abstract shapes and lines on a piece of paper. The actual atoms are the building blocks which form these crystals in the way that they touch one another and connect. These are some examples of building block shapes that will tile the 3D plane, so to speak, and form crystals. You may want to pause it for a second and note the geometry of these shapes and their symmetries. The rules for 3 dimensions are similar to the ones for 2 dimensions.
Keep this in your head, because basically these people are trying to create their own universe of fake information, and you'll see this image a couple times.
Only are,
and that's a real thing, by the way.
You are dividing into a sphere instead of a circle,
like
which means you are dealing with 2 angles instead of 1. The polar angle must divide evenly into 180 degrees, or 1 pi, while the azimuthal angle must divide evenly into 360 degrees, or 2 pi. This is because in order to map out the entire area on the surface of a sphere, you would need to go straight from the North Pole to the South Pole through the polar angle 180 degrees. You only have to go halfway around to get to the other side, and then you take that line, and then when you rotate it around the equator, you rotate it around that way, and it basically covers the entire sphere and covers it all, and that's why it's 2 pi. There are basically 7 different crystal systems with defining symmetry, and for more information I suggest you go to Wikipedia and read up on crystals, or whatever else. You can find a book on crystals or whatever else.
So he doesn't know what books to find on crystals. That's interesting, but he knows all that. That's cool. All right, let's check out. Well, let's do one more video on his channel, and then let's watch the interview with him and with Brett and Heather Hang. It's actually I think it's just with Brett Weinstein and Heather Hang. Well, this is interesting. Hilariously tailored to me. My ads are so hilariously tailored to me, and it's hilarious.
What kind of stuff have you been testing that you're really excited about?
Well, the big one I'm super excited about is this 1980s Alciphon experiment with nuclear spin alignments, and testing whether that nuclear spin and nuclear magnetic resonance might have something to do with gravitation, testing what gravitation is. There's lots of theories on what gravity is, and we don't really have a full, agreed upon theory, I would say, about what gravity actually is. So there's a lot of different theories that are floating around with our scientists, and this one is particularly about spin alignment. It was by a guy named Frederick Alciphon, and an aerospace company called Boeing Aerospace did some testing on this back in the 80s, and I want to test this with some of these new materials that have come out in these recent FOIA reports called spin glasses. And spin glasses, it's like a way that a glass is not like a crystal. It's has all kinds of random alignments of the molecules inside the structure. This is a spin glass is like a random alignments of the magnetic structure of the material. So it has a completely random and mixed up magnetic structure. And these types of materials might be better for producing skins that are skins of craft that like could maybe be, if it works and it has anti-gravity when you hit them with the right frequencies or whatever.
That makes
so we're going to try a lot of those experiments.
None of that makes any sense. I'm just going to put that out there. None of that makes any sense. They're trying to confuse you. Magnets, I don't think have much to do with gravity. I don't know. I know the mass of the Earth now. Yeah, I don't think they're both forces. But as far as I know, magnetic force and gravitational force have nothing to do with each other. Is this true? Someone correct me if that's not true. I'm not going to look this up right now. Obviously, what he's saying isn't real, but I'm saying I don't think it's even on the right path to being correct.
Now and microwaves, and we have a couple different frequencies.
This is an hour-long interview with two puppets. Who is this for? Adults?
And you've been sort of doing these experiments and running a lab in your garage for a while now, right?
All right, so let me go back to this. I have a little. I don't really have much of a lab here or a garage here. I live in an apartment right now in Rhode Island, but I teamed up with a couple other people, several different groups of researchers that have their own labs and are interested in getting involved with this research. And so there's been a couple different laboratories that have I've teamed up with and gone down to and visited and done some experiments with. So all encompassing, knowledge of all. There are some real big whales out there in terms of knowledge of people that just know tons of stuff and are super, up on their knowledge. But and there are people out there that are, if you're attempting science, real science, you're engaging in the debate and you're actually engaging in experiments and stuff. I guess that makes you a scientist, right? But if you're stringing things along and then using scanty data and skewing your statistics and your results to make sure your conclusions match your hypothesis, then I don't think that's science. And maybe that is what a pseudoscientist is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like those people definitely who falsify data and so forth.
This guy is giving us a definition of what a pseudoscientist is. I love that.
They'll definitely be attacked in the academy on Earth, but
Eventually.
They'll rarely be called a pseudoscientist. It's a really
I'm just saying, if the people are dumb, it's easy to control them.
interesting sort of class term. I just can't get enough of it.
Oh, it's a guild.
And what better way to make them dumb is to lie to their faces and make them confused about what information they can trust and what they can't trust, and so they'll just go, oh, well, I'll just buy whatever Papa Obama tells me, or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's guild thing.
It's rare that you have a credential and you've entered the guild that you can be called a pseudoscientist.
Yeah.
It's only the people that haven't gone through the gilding process or have turned their back on the gilding process that are called pseudoscientists.
Yeah, like even if you're an adjunct professor or something, at least you're in the system, It's like, probably won't be called, they might call you a crappy scientist.
They might call you an adjunct, but they won't call you a pseudoscientist.
Right.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting, and I think that if you don't have alternative ideas in science, the field sort of stagnates and it can get really boring and dull and old. And I hope that while there's some people that come on my channel and leave one comment that says pseudoscience and that's all they say, there's a lot of people on there that are like, hey, this is like interesting stuff, like I'm actually, I'm getting me to think outside the box on a lot of these things, and maybe that's not a bad idea. I could be wrong, that's all right. I can think outside the box and be like, well, that's silly and that's not going to work, and let's try it. No, it doesn't work. But I don't know.
So by labeling himself and saying that, oh, people always call me pseudoscience, but I'm actually doing real stuff, and here's why, then everyone else who says, like, you should actually worry about vaccines and things like that, and repeats the same things, this is not pseudoscience, will now be clumped in the same category as this guy. Okay, it's all about confusion, I guess. All right, so let's go check out and see what we have here, because this is actually a really fun podcast. I implore you guys to watch this on your own, please, and support Brett Weinstein, Heather Hang. I'm unfortunately not right now just because I'm poor and I'm working on a project with right now I'm basically involved with a lot of online atheists in their community, partly because I like debating, but I want them to be able to see God, because I think that sounds crazy, because this is all going to get very crazy, I think, and I think it's important for all of us to be as much as possible on the same page as far as we're not going to be using violence. We'll lay down our lives before we actually, I think, fight, and I don't want to, let's go the route of Gandhi. That's all. If I can't do a religious appeal to them, that's what I'll say. Do you want to be known as Cain or Gandhi? Cain, let's find a real world example, but still. It's hard to find good figures because we actually worship a lot of revenge type characters in our culture today. So it's hard to appeal, but we will. Anyway, so let's watch this. Please support them. Yeah.
Watching this space.
And like I said, I was giving money to the atheists so I could stay in their corner for a little bit. You know what I mean? I can give them some material and let them. I'm subscribing to pay for my space.
4 years, formerly called them. And I've invited him on Dark Horse to talk to us primarily about the UAP question. Are we being visited by extraterrestrials? Have we been in the past? Should we expect some sort of contact between us and them in the future? So, Jeremy, without further ado, welcome to Dark Horse.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
Actually, okay, I'm gonna go like normal speed because this is important. Because if this guy's crazy and this guy's a super big fan of the podcast and there's a tight association between these two, that makes Brett look bad. Because Brett, is a very serious scientist, him and Heather, who are actually trying to deal seriously into complicated things within Big Pharma right now. And that's actually a very hard thing to do because scientists are like people, and just like people will do things to make money, and there can be kind of the more incentive there is to make money, there can be some questionable studies, and you can get attacked by a large, it sounds conspiratorial, but just the simplest way to put it, by a large system of people who are trying to make money and reinforcing that system of making money, and will say that, no, that's all pseudoscience, this all 100% works. And obviously the government has an interest that people get vaccinated, just because I think they think it's just simpler that way. So they don't want you to think about possible downsides. But, it's important to be honest because if you're giving everyone a single treatment, that's actually a bad idea because we actually have natural variation in mutations for a reason. And it's so one thing can't go through and accidentally kill everyone, even if it's a small likelihood of it happening. So it's important, But anyways, these two being associated together can hurt Brett. So you can see he's kind of like fake fanboying, where he's like, "Oh, it's so good to be here. Yeah, I really like you." I know because I've been an actor before, and I've also been a director.
Most of my audience is probably not terribly familiar with the UAP question. Past, should we expect some sort of contact between us and them in the future? So, Jeremy, without further ado, welcome to Dark Horse.
Thanks for having me, Brett. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Awesome. So I'm not sure quite where to start here. I will say most of my audience is probably not terribly familiar with the UAP question. They've, of course, read stories in the mainstream press and, like me, don't know exactly what to think about them. I'm certainly cautious, and the reason I haven't ventured down this road very far is that so far what I've seen has the feel of a psyop to me. This feels terrestrial in origin, which does not mean that I don't believe.
This guy, and this is what Brett and Jordan and other people who do this sort of thing are really good at, not letting the participant know if they know or not. And so you saw a little hint of it just now.
That there are extraterrestrials with advanced technology in the universe. In fact, evolutionarily speaking, the fact that we exist suggests the likelihood is very high that there are many other such civilizations. But as for whether or not they've been to Earth, I'm a skeptic, and I thought you'd be the guy to help us sort it out.
It's an interesting question when you're dealing.
And if you'll pay attention here, even though this guy's entire channel revolves around alien stuff, he spends the entire time debunking alien stuff. It's very confusing. It's all this very strange smokescreen where the whole time he's talking about aliens and all these technology from aliens, and then if you actually ask him, he'll just debunk everything about aliens. So what's going on there? He's being honest, being factual, but he's like spreading misinformation without actually saying anything.
With when we study things in nature,
Right.
we tend to use blinds, and as many scientists who are studying this phenomenon has pointed out, how do you study something that's studying you and doesn't want you to study it, and is perhaps technologically thousands of years more advanced? Maybe it's so, and uses invisibility, cloaking, and stealth technology that's way beyond what we have. So this is a good question about whether they exist or not, and whether what we're seeing out there is actually them, because if it is them, then they obviously want to be seen.
As longtime listeners will know, Heather and I spent 15 years teaching in an experimental educational environment. It was one of the most rewarding experiences of our lives, and that is why I am so excited about the sponsor for this episode, Ralston College. Ralston College is a...
I was going to say exactly that. To the extent that the modern UAP version of whatever is taking place is happening, those entities want to be seen, whether they're terrestrial or extraterrestrial. Whatever cloaking they have is obviously not working, because we have a large number of highly credible reports. People have certainly seen something.
Yeah, there's a number of cases. The Battle of Los Angeles, they fired anti-gun turrets, anti-aircraft guns at this thing for hours. Obviously, there was something there. Some people suggest it was an early form of this projection technology that they were.
Let's look at Battle of Los Angeles real quick, so I'm not sure if I've seen that footage. Okay. On February 1942, so during World War II, people... Okay, this just sounds like probably a story of hysteria. Okay, this is not interesting. You get what happened. During World War II, they started shooting at nothing in the air at one point. Okay. Cool story.
Using multiple spotlights as well. It was in the Hollywood Hills in California, so they had a lot of these spotlights that they'd shine in the sky back then, and so they had them all pointed up at this object, and they feel like that somehow that could have created a hologram effect, and that's indeed how.
So he just explained what happened. It's not an object. He's saying that, and I've seen this before, if you have a bunch of lights crossing each other in space, it makes it look like there's a glowing thing right there. I'm not sure if that's what happened there, but he's contradicting himself. The hologram effect means there's no object. I've seen that they had a Godzilla display one time where they did that. If I remember, they had a big light. I think they had other ones going around. But yeah.
I believe they created the Tupac hologram on the stage.
Yeah, so it's
they
nothing
used,
physical.
A smoke machine and 3 projectors to triangulate the imaging.
So, do you see what's confusing here? He's acting like this is a UFO, and then saying at the same time it's just caused by a holographic effect by a bunch of spotlights pointing in the air.
And
so wait. Sorry, I'm going to keep slowing you down because I really want to understand this. My impression in the modern version of the UAP question, the thing that stands out to me most is that you have what appear to be objects. They appear to be moving through the atmosphere at speeds that are improbable without an apparent means of propulsion, which could, of course, just mean they use some other kind of propulsion. But the thing that...
As much as Jeremy Reyes claims to be a huge fan of the show and love it, watch how much disdain he has on his face throughout this whole episode.
Really doesn't sit well with me is that they don't appear to make a tremendous noise. That the displacement of air is, who knows, aliens could have technology that would cause the air displacement to be neutralized in some way that we can't understand. But if they're not bothering to cloak themselves visually, it's a little hard to understand why they would be doing that. And I'm even doubtful that it could be done that effectively.
Or whether it's being done by them at all, or whether these things are man-made altogether. And that's one thing that's missing from a lot of the mainstream conversation is the technology side of this. And the people that the mainstream, if you do get the technology side of this, you ask anyone at any UFO conference how UFOs fly, and your answer is going to be element 115. And it almost seems like they've poisoned the well on the scientific, physics side of this. Anyone in the physics community that wants to get into UFOs is sort of hit with this, oh God, this is just not something I even want to associate myself with. Scientifically or academically, whereas if you really get into the science, like in those OSAP DIRD reports, that's the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents, you can search that on Black Vault and come up with some of those files. You get into the real cool stuff like metallic glasses, for example, which have elasticity and strength beyond carbon fiber, beyond steel and other things. And you talk about metamaterials, which are used in cloaking devices and invisibility shields, and also apparently in some of these warp drive skins, allegedly in the terahertz range. Interesting stuff you find, and then you get. I was looking into terahertz and what scientists were working on terahertz, and looked up classified terahertz and found, here's a guy that was working at Wright State University, right next to Wright-Patterson, who brought a bunch of,
So none of this. A lot of this is just talking about experimental technology of things that he's heard about. None of this addresses the question that Brett asked, which was how does the air displacement work and no noise.
Worked home with him and got a year in prison for it because it was classified, related to whatever he was doing that the U.S. Air Force was apparently, funding or interested in, because they're the ones who showed up and busted him. So you find interesting cases like that, which I don't think anyone was reporting on that story. It was out there in the news, and they had broken it. The first news report actually was from Fairborn, Ohio, and it was
it said that they busted the guy for a marijuana grow. And then, like, the story changed. It wasn't really marijuana plants. It was classified documents, and that was just kind of to throw, people off the trail. But the real story came out, and I picked it up, and I don't know if anyone else picked it up or really talked about it, but I thought that was an interesting connection because it kind of verified, well, at least they're doing classified research related to this. Maybe it was a setup or a plant, but that's, I don't know, to get a guy to do a year in jail, that's kind of hard for a PSYOP. So
a year in jail is not very hard for a PSYOP.
Well, I mean, yes and no. Look, it's not hard to come up with a proof of concept of how you might get somebody willing to spend a year in jail. Either they've got something on him and it was a better deal than he might have had, or, obviously most people will have their price. And,
look at his face.
Anyway.
Just watch his face during that whole thing, please.
To come up with a proof of concept of how you might get somebody willing to spend a year in jail. Either they've got something on him and
he's too focused on trying to figure out what Brett is thinking that he does not even listen to what he's saying. Like, you know what I mean? He's trying to figure out what Brett is up to right now. And then that's why his face kind of freezes up like this. See, that's like...
I mean, yes and no.
He's kept the same face.
Look, it's not hard to come up with a proof of concept of how you might get somebody...
And the smiling is also a sense of nervousness.
Willing to spend a year in jail. Either they've got something on him and it was a better deal than he might have had, or, obviously most people will have their price. And anyway, it's not hard to imagine how it could be done. I'm not saying it is.
Yeah, but I just go look down it's hard to look down the conspiracy rabbit hole sideways at some of this stuff.
Can I back you up a bit though? There's something that you breezed by there that I think is important for us to discuss, and you just feel free to correct me wherever I've got this wrong.
No, slow me down because I go off on this stuff. I've been doing it way too long.
Yeah, you're in deep. With respect to things like propulsion technology, I should say.
Kind of flip back there. Okay, at least I can answer this question now. I'm not in unknown territory. Okay.
My brother Eric has obviously been active in this discussion, and one of the things that he points to.
What is that reaction? That's a fake reaction. He's like, yes, of course, yeah, that's a fake.
My brother Eric has obviously been active in this discussion. And one of the things that he points...
He's also kind of excited because he knows he can associate some of his work with Eric well.
...is that the crossing of large distances, which is the number one obstacle, presumably, to any advanced civilization getting here, might actually not really be about propulsion at all. That it might be about space and time not functioning in the way that we have come to understand them, and that it might be possible to cross large distances without actually crossing them. And this is necessary. I'll just point out that our galaxy itself is 100,000 light years wide. Light, which we understand to be traveling at the fastest speed possible, takes 100,000 years to get just simply across the Milky Way, let alone to anywhere else. And, so that means that, light that we are seeing from the other side of the galaxy started its journey 90,000 years before humans started farming, right?
Okay. Now, how long did it take the light to get there from the photon's perspective?
Well, an interesting question. And believe me, we are almost immediately out of my depth mathematically and physically.
He laughs right there because he knows that he is too.
Interesting question. And believe me, we are almost immediately out of my depth.
These people are still human. You know what I mean? They're not like robots. They honestly realize that there's a ridiculousness to what they're doing too, and you can pull them out of it. And that's what they're trying to do here. It's funny.
mathematically and physically. I to be honest,
well, he doesn't have a bad misconception of it. And the idea is that if you can focus a number of your photons on another point in space-time, from the photons' perspective, is that
how much another point in space-time?
Those points are entangled. And the pilot wave interpretation, of the Bohmian interpretation of quantum mechanics, says that those waves travel forward and back in time, and then decide which way to go.
So we are out of my depth, but let's just say we can black box the question of how an alien intelligence might have found itself in proximity to Earth, and we can put aside skepticism with respect to whether or not they could be here at all, because there may or may not be mechanisms for crossing those large different distances on timescales that sound reasonable to us. And if they exist, then the things that are seen here on the Earth side of that journey.
So one of the things that Brett is doing is he's calling out the mysterious nature of a lot of these channels, like Alien Scientists, being absolutely ridiculous, uninteresting, and offering nothing, yet having a large follower base. Whether that's bots, whether it's some sort of algorithmic play. I mean, it's partly bots for sure. But yeah. And so when he's saying that how fast they're able to reach a point without making a sound, or any sort of displacement or ripples that we'd be familiar with, that's what he's talking about. And Jeremy can also feel this. And so watch that, keeping that under conversation in mind.
Are not likely, well, again, out of my depth, but are not likely to be whatever it is that cross those large distances. They would be local transportation? Is that fair, or am I just...
Yeah, I think within an atmosphere, maybe the vast distances of space, if there's nothing in between, they might be able to do some type of a warp drive where you are able to entangle to another point in space-time and then shrink the distance between using quantum entanglement. But for at least short distances, there's plenty of other technologies that, some of the stuff was discovered, Biffeld Brown effect, discovered in 1928 and was classified for 80 years. 2008, Obama declassified it along with a whole bunch of other stuff, and it very quietly. Turns out the B-2 Spirit bomber uses a version of this where they positively charge the front leading edge of the wing and negatively charge the exhaust stream, and it helps with
parent aircraft within or craft within the atmosphere in large measure, because they do not create the sonic booms, for example, that one would expect when something moves faster than the speed of sound within an atmosphere as a result of its impact on just the displacement of air. And what wouldn't do that is a projection, let's just say from above, maybe. If you had something projecting onto particles in the atmosphere, water particles, let's say.
There's also laser-induced plasma effect, proton beam that they can use, anything that can excite. They cross the beams, and the point the beams cross, there's enough energy there where it actually can create like a plasma in the air.
And the plasma would allow you to project something, is that the idea?
So there's you can project. You can also dot matrix project like 3D images by patterning where the dots cross in the air. And
okay, so to connect the dots for viewers and listeners, the idea is it is very technologically difficult to imagine craft that can move through the atmosphere at incredible speeds, even more difficult to imagine craft that can do that without creating sonic booms. What makes this much more tractable from both the perspective of the speed at which things travel and their failure to create the usual sonic consequences of a craft moving through the air would be something like laser pointer, right? If you put a laser pointer and you put the dot on the ground for your cat, there's no meaningful limit to how quickly you can move it across the floor, because a tiny movement of your fingers moves the thing feet. And so were somebody interested in projecting something that appeared to be an object onto something like plasma or water particles in the atmosphere or whatever it was, they could then move it incredibly rapidly. And the prediction of that hypothesis would be that it would not have sonic consequences, right?
No, it would not. Yeah, you would not have a sonic boom with that. And
so he's just pointing out how nonsense what this guy is saying, because the entire time he's talking about physical objects moving in the air, and then if you actually ask him how this is possible, he brings up lasers. Lasers, or oftentimes it seems like it's dust particles in front of the camera. You know what I mean? Because a small movement, like right here, I can move a laser. If the laser is technically going from one to like the edge of the visible universe, I can go like that, move to the other side of the universe, and it's a large distance for me just going like that. So there's a play between distance. You get what I'm saying. It's not that complicated.
For the audience, if they want to look more into this, the technical term the military uses is ECCM, or electronic countermeasure. And the term that you can look up to find the video on it is Pentagon talking plasma.
Pentagon talking plasma grenade. I think I've seen this on his channel before, actually. Well, it's just gonna link me to his channel. Yeah, I've seen this.
Pentagon scientists have finished testing on an early weapon that can make laser plasma balls talk.
Stop, or we will be forced to fire upon you.
It's called the laser-induced plasma effect, and it's made by the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate. So what they've done is basically created a laser that can shoot out to a certain distance, and they can pipe in sound waves through it, and actually make human voice sounds and commands.
Stop, or we will be forced to fire upon you.
Now where this becomes useful...
I actually think I might have experienced that once before. Once time in Mexico. Inside of I heard, when I was in Mexico, I was convinced that my family was dead, and at that point, I was basically already told that before, to shorten up the story, but I hadn't really accepted it, and I was walking down the road, and once I finally accepted it, suddenly it sounded like the car that was parked next to me had a radio, and it sounded like it turned on, and it said something like, he gets it, or it said something like that, like, he's got it, or something like that, along those lines. It was just intimating that, mission accomplished, not mission accomplished, but he finally understands and he can accept it. It was a short phrase, I forget what it was so fucking stressful. But it was weird. And it sounded actually a lot like that, because it almost sounded like the radio turned on and then said that for a second, and then, I don't know.
Around an area we want to keep perimeter secure. So essentially, the people on the edge of the perimeter, rather than sending troops out there and tell them to get away.
I don't know. I have no idea what that works. All I know, there's probably easier ways to do that. It was just a weird experience in the desert.
Pentagon talking plasma balls should find a video on it. You can find some of those declassified videos on it, and some of these declassified videos that other people are finding through.
How do you put the word grenade in there? It has nothing to do with grenade.
They are going back to some of these companies from 20 years ago, or longer, that they may have had this. So you got to think in the 1960s, when they were developing lasers at Q Division, which was a lot of the stuff that they did at Q Division still classified. What would be the first thing you would do as a scientist after you built 2 lasers? Cross the beams.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's now talk about things that don't fit.
Also, do you know how much his demeanor is different in this video when he's kind of caught than the ones before, and how like giggly and nervous he is? This isn't I'm excited to be here nervous. This is I'm on my tippy toes and awake. Because
this model.
Is, crazy.
Okay, I can think of a couple. You will know more if they exist. One is radar signatures. And the other is, I've seen one video, which I have to say, at the level of the deep fakes of other things that I've seen, I can think of no obstacle to faking this at a video level. But I've seen one instance where a craft appeared to have an impact on the water that it was traveling slightly above.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is not...
He doesn't even believe the bullshit that he's peddling.
...predicted, as far as I know, by moving the equivalent of lasers project images.
It could be a missile, and certain the advanced missiles that they're building now, including torpedoes, employ a new type of technology called supercavitation. And the way that they do this is through a directed energy. Actually, that they use like a focused maser that focuses a microwave that heats up air or water in a pocket at a target, at a focal point, a couple feet or inches, however long in front, with whatever they've calculated is the optimal focal point, but in front of the nose cone of the craft. And when they direct that energy there, it basically supercavitates the air or water in front of it, so it creates a vacuum for the missile or whatever.
Pulls the missile forward.
Huh?
It pulls the missile forward.
It pulls. It can pull the missile forward, but it also eliminates the sonic boom because it's crap. I don't know that it makes a noise still, but it's not quite as loud as a sonic boom because of how it's eliminating the air.
Meaning this is not a solution to anything that we're talking about, because these things are absolutely silent, almost like they're not physically there.
So the air doesn't tear through the air and create the same turbulence effects afterwards.
I see. So if these were objects moving at high rates through the atmosphere, is it possible the sonic boom could be canceled?
If you had this type of supercavitating technology with these lasers, and NASA started developing this in the 1980s out of Rensselaer Polytech Institute If you had this type of supercavitating technology with these lasers, and NASA started developing this in the 1980s out of Rensselaer Polytech Institute under a guy named Dr. Lake Marabou, Leikmyrabo, and he was the head scientist on it. And there's a number of other patents you can look up if you look up blasting air in front of hypersonic missiles.
Got it.
That will give you an article that you can find all the patents and stuff on the.
Okay, so I think where we are is there's a lot about the modern observations of UAPs that is.
Look at his face. I'm sorry.
That will give you an article.
This is great. This could be the finale for the episode. You know what? Yeah, we're gonna end it here because honestly, this is really gonna be up for you guys to check out and really dive into yourselves. I don't want to be plagiarizing. I'm not into the whole YouTube react thing. So, I think we'll leave it at this video. Please go check this out. It's called Unknown Origins. Jeremy Reyes here is the guest. Unknown Origin. Brett Weinstein speaks to Jeremy Reyes on the Dark Horse podcast. Sorry. Let's just finish up on this face here.
Blasting air in front of hypersonic missiles.
Got it.
That will give you an article that you can find all the patents and stuff on the.
Okay, so I think where we are is there's a lot about the modern observations of UAPs that is most easily explained as projections that can move at an arbitrary velocity without displacing air, there are possibilities for how the natural consequences in air might be partially or completely canceled.
He's faking to be a little more
So
shocked.
far, I haven't heard anything.
Because I think his way out here is to pretend like maybe he's just being caught for being an idiot or something. But obviously he's thought about this before.
In air might be partially or completely canceled. So far, I haven't heard anything. I mean, my cynical take as a
can I add a couple more things for that people they can look up. I interviewed a guy named T.D. Barnes. That's Theodore Barnes. He's the head of special projects out at Area 51 for about 40 years. He worked out there, and he seems to think that all these pilots are seeing is. And I asked him this in the interview twice. He says that they're seeing our spoofing technology. It's our lasers and our ECCMs and these capabilities that we have.
What's an ECCM?
That's the electronic countermeasure. And he, in an interview also on the drive, he talks about Project Nemesis and Project Palladium, which is interesting because Project Palladium was a system of these balloons with radar reflectors inside. So they were actually these pilots that were reportedly seeing a cube inside of a sphere.
Detecting something in the world, they could presumably do that too. But what you...
Yeah, so we're just gonna end it. We're gonna end it right here because this is great. Okay.
A lot of this is technology that people aren't aware of, and if they do the research, they're like, "Holy crap! You could literally fake all this stuff." But then the UFO people get all mad at me because they're like, "Well, you're just."
Oh yeah, we'll watch this little bit.
DRFM technology. That's digital radio frequency memory. Now, that's similar to what the Stingray is that the FBI uses to eavesdrop on people's cell phones. It basically takes the digital radio frequency signal from your cell phone, copies it, and then pretends to be or from the cell tower, and then beams it and pretends to be the cell tower by copying
this
that.
This is the briefcase that they put somewhere that allows them to intercept your transmissions without your knowledge.
It doesn't need to be a briefcase. They can put inside of a rock now.
Oh, a rock. Cool. Yeah. I will tell you, if they are listening, they got to up their fucking game because my cell phone malfunctions at a rate that is unnatural. And so if you're going to invade my privacy, at least do it with quality tech so you don't disturb my ability to live a life. That's just my editorial comment on that front. All right. I disrupt.
I love that. That feels so good. I'm sorry. That feels so good. I'm in my privacy being invaded all the time. It sucks.
Did your flow here?
No, that's fine, man. I was pretty much done after the balloons.
Well,
that's another. A lot of this is technology that people aren't aware of, and if they do the research, they're like, "Holy crap! You could literally fake all this stuff." But then the UFO people get all mad at me because they're like, "Well, you're just like every UFO case now. You can just explain it away in terms of our technology. So what if aliens really do show up and you're just over here saying it's laser beams and our tech, advanced drones that have hypersonic capabilities and
Well,
He's presented no evidence for aliens yet this whole time. Just explained it away with lasers and is now saying that, well, if they do show up, we just think it's lasers will make a mistake. Why is he into UFOs if he has no evidence of anything and it's all just explained away by U.S. technology or something?
I would push back on those people because
let's capabilities and
Well, I would push back on those people because we are dealing with a scenario in which if those things that people are observing are aliens who wish to be observed, they can settle the question any day they want to. Right. So you're either dealing with the aliens if those things that people are observing are aliens who wish to be observed, they can settle the question any day they want to. Right. So you're either I would push back on those people because we are dealing with a scenario in which if those things that people are observing are aliens who wish to be observed, they can settle the question any day they want to. Right. So you're either dealing with the aliens are ineffectively hiding themselves from us, or you're dealing with aliens who can settle the question. As far as the radar signatures, that's a more interesting answer than I was expecting. My sense was, if the people who are doing the projecting, maybe from space, of what seem to be objects moving at improbable speeds without propulsion mechanisms through our atmosphere, want to seed something into a radar that is not a natural consequence of the radar detecting something in the world, they could presumably do that too. But what you have proposed is that there are technologies which allow the projection of a phony radar signal, which makes perfect sense. I will tell you, in my graduate work, I was a bat biologist. I worked on echolocating bats. I did not work on echolocation, but nonetheless, my bats were echolocators. And there's always a question about whether or not an animal that has this capacity can put a signature in front of another animal, right? Like, how sophisticated is this? And maybe in the case of bats, it's unlikely. Maybe it'd be more likely in the case of something like, dolphins.
Or humans. That's funny. I love the way he does that.
And, to be honest, I don't know that there's any evidence that they can, but the possibility of it is something that's been on people's minds for many decades.
Right. Well, we have acoustic.
Sorry, look at his reaction. He's so great. He's so into what Brett is saying. He's like letting the jig up. Look at it.
Like, how sophisticated is this? And maybe in the case of bats, it's unlikely. Maybe it'd be more likely in the case of something like, dolphins. And, to be honest, I don't know that there's any evidence that they can, but the possibility of it is something that's been on people's minds for many decades.
Right. Well, we have acoustic metamaterial. So what if there's like a moth that has a metamaterial of hairs or cilia on the back of its, abdomen that reflects the bat's radar sonar signals.
He had to completely change the conversation because if he commented in that same line, they're trained obviously well at this. If he commented on that same line, he would reveal himself. So he has to just jump out.
Something,
Well, it's actually very similar to, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I used to lecture on this. The paint that is used on the stealth bombers and fighters is an extremely fragile material, for exactly the same reason that moths are covered in this soft stuff, which is radar absorbing. And so, there's all sorts of tricks that the stealth technology uses. One of them is that instead of being rounded, where there's always a tangent facing the radar source, because the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection, if you make a faceted aircraft, then if you aim a beam of something at it, it tends to reflect off in a non-useful direction, right? You have to sense from all over the place. But in addition, you cover the thing with something that is absorbent, and much less of the energy gets reflected back at all. So once again, we have reproduced an insight that selection built into creatures before we knew anything about it.
As a person who's tried this before, this is such an art what Brett is doing. This is such an art. Mwah. Mwah. Okay. All right.
Right. And it's also responsible for the chitin on.
Sorry, this is like the greatest intelligence. Like, I didn't realize actually how smart someone like Brett Weinstein is. I mean, I know he's like smart, you know what I mean? But like, I just didn't get that extra, like, that level of social awareness or something, It's just like, it's such a great move. Such a great move.
The thing with something that is absorbent, and much less of the energy gets reflected back at all. So once again, we have reproduced an insight that selection built into creatures before we knew anything about it.
Right, and it's also responsible for the chitin on various scarab beetles, because there's ones that are silver.
You get the point. This is a great episode. Yeah, please check this out. For Jeremy Reyes on the Spook Meter, 4 out of 10. So Jeremy Reyes, compared to Gary Nolan, he's a lot worse. He's a lot more confusing. His background makes a lot less sense. Now he does have the downside of having like 17 years of having like 17 years worth of postings, which means that it's hard to keep a consistent line of directive, especially because that kind of going to kind of change over time as far as how they're going to need to be deployed. It's actually a great way of trying to figure out who these people are, is you'll see them sort of change as they're needed to. Sometimes they might even change because they need to do something with you, which is very surreal when that starts happening. But anyways, Jeremy Reyes, on the Spookometer, I'll give him 4 out of 10. Jeremy Reyes. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or concerns, if you think you found one of these folks and you'd like to let me know, contact me on X. There's a link in the description. Or if you're scared because they are like messing with you, because they will mess with you into silence and try and frighten you into not saying anything, or just make you convince you're crazy. So if you want to have someone to talk to, if you want like tips and tricks of what to do, and what things that have helped me work through this in about the 3 years that I've been dealing with this, please come reach out. I'll give you whatever help I can. But if you're an agent, get lost. Thank you guys very much. You guys have a great evening. Be safe. Be honest. Be true. Be American.